within hours of us learning that Nico Iamaleava was probably going to join the UCLA Bruins, it has become official. He has committed and signed to transfer to UCLA. Let's talk about what happens next. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching the #1 college football show, welcome. Thank you for joining us here. We talk college football year round. So if that is something you are into, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like this video, and leave me a comment below. How do you feel now that we have reached what feels like the end of the Nico Iamaleava saga? And while this feels like it has taken on so much and there has been so much that has been said about it, let us remind each other that, 9 days ago, this dude was playing quarterback at Tennessee and he was the starter. Not just that, he had just led them to a college football playoff appearance. Now, since then, we have come to find out how each party really thinks about the other, right? Even going into this season, I had asked the question of whether or not Nico Iamaleava was worth all of the money and time that Tennessee was putting into him. They challenged the NCAA rules about how and when they could start paying him to get him to Tennessee. $8 million over 3 years. He was scheduled to make $2.4 million this year alone. Last year, he didn't play like we had expected a guy who's getting $2 million a year to play. That said, it was a running team. They did a lot of max protect. They had a lot of guys out in routes, and they had a great defensive line, great secondary that they rode into the college football playoff with an at-large bid, and then they get beat down 42-17 by Ohio State after talking big and bad and then absolutely getting spanked on the behind. January comes around, and Darren Mensah's signing from Tulane to Duke for $8 million over 2 years, as opposed to the 3 that Nico was getting, really upended the quarterback market because you got a group of 5 quarterback who's very good last year, who's getting this kind of money from Duke ahead of the House versus NCAA settlement, which we think is going to allow for universities to cap their spending at $20.5 million on name, image, and likeness. And we expect $14 million to go to the football programs alone. So you've had so much movement. Carson Beck goes from Georgia to Miami, where he's probably going to make around $3 million a year. You've seen John Mateer go from Washington State to Oklahoma, where he's going to do about the same. And I think Nico Iamaleava and his camp believe that they could try to hold Tennessee ransom in the spring portal by threatening to hold out if they did not give him a raise. The number that he wanted was twice as much as he's getting paid, $4 million this year, to which Tennessee balked. And many believe they were right to. And doing college football a service and doing so, going, we're not going to get bullied into paying more for less, frankly. So they let him go into the portal, and that was that. Now, since then, he has gone from being one of those guys that people wanted to see break out in 2025 to, okay, good riddance and goodbye. Transfers to UCLA, and we don't know the number, not yet. And he gives Pete Thamel a quote that mostly says, hey, thanks, Tennessee. I really liked my time there. I didn't plan for it to go this way. I hope we can still be friends. And I'm sure Tennessee looked at that note and was going, nah, homie, we're lighting this one on fire. This is not, I think, that dissimilar to how Tennessee feels about Lane Kiffin, okay? It is not a fan base that takes kindly to being bullied, misrepresented, or lied to. A lot of things you can get down with in Tennessee, but one of those things is trying to extort them or lie to them. That's just not going to happen. That's not going to be the way it goes out. There are better ways to do this, right? And I think some of this just comes right down to who's making decisions. I am not buying into any kind of thought that leads to a papa telling a 20-year-old quarterback what he's going to do as a millionaire. I realize there are some of y'all that are trying to treat Polynesian folks and culture like a monolith, but I'm not buying into that. One, they're not a monolith. They're individuals themselves. Two, I really need y'all to unpack how much your daddy could get you to do at 20 years old if you make more money than he does. I am going to speak for my family. I help everybody else around me. they are not always in a position to help me. That said, I am going to take on the advice of my parents. Being stupid not to. My parents are very smart people. However, I make the decisions. And for those of y'all that really want to talk about how this goes among minorities, what happens is when you make the most money, you sit at the head of the table because you are the breadwinner. And when you are the breadwinner, people treat you that way, which means that you take on advice and you make decisions because when they don't go well, they land on your head. And those of y'all that continue to infantilize Nico Iamaleava, infantilize Nico Iamaleava, just getting it wrong, right? You doing the patriarchy thing right now, and I don't like it. I'm not gonna counter that. Now that said, he's gone to UCLA, off the clearance rack to some, and you look at their Big Ten schedule, and yes, Ohio State is on it. That's gonna have you something you deal with, but now you got to deal with whether or not Joey Aguilar wants to stay among others, right? That might not want to compete with Nico Iamaleava for the job. To say nothing of what else is going to be around him at UCLA. Because remember, they weren't bad, but they weren't good last year either. They have a lot of work to do. There's a lot to pull back from. And I think, one of our favorite dunking points on all of this is, dog, are you going to see any of the money that you expect to make when you go to California? Because the taxes there are ridiculous. They're the taxes in California. Like it's one of the reasons that it's not that attractive to live there and or move there. It feels like half your money is already gone before you get there. Whereas in Tennessee, they say, nah, to hell with state income tax, dog. State rights off in here. Whatever states' rights means to you. And to me, I'm going, nah. I would much rather pay some taxes for, basics, fundamentals, public school education, libraries, waterworks, the whole nine. Like, I would like to live in a country where I don't have to pay health insurance. But we're not there yet. That said, transferring to Tennessee to UCLA is a step down. It just is. There's no getting around that. It's a step down. And I think when you are listening to Nico Iamaleava say things like the offense doesn't work, the offense isn't preparing him for things to do, and he doesn't have wide receivers to throw the ball to, I'm like, you're a quarterback. You don't get to make those excuses. You really don't. Especially after you make the playoff and you had a tailback that rushed for over 1,200 yards. You were not the engine you were not the engine that was powering that car. You were not the straw that's stirring that drink. Nico Iamaleava thinks he's Max Verstappen in a Red Bull, and he is not. Okay? You are Lando Norris, my guy. You were in a very fast car that you wrecked. That you wrecked in qualifying. And that you had to really rely on Oscar Piastri to stay out your way because, frankly, that's the world champ now, right? If Max was in a McLaren, you'd never see him. That is what Nico Iamaleava thinks he is. But if you think you're that good, you're going to turn UCLA into a championship contender. I don't see it going that way. But now that this is done, maybe, just maybe, we might get to see Nico Iamaleava turn a corner, become a little bit better at this business thing, and an even better quarterback.